My husband is cruel to his biological child, and I support it. Am I a jerk? My husband, 42 male, and I, 36 female, have a very solid relationship. We have been together for around 13 years, have no children but are very active on my nephew, let's call him Mark, for male. For some background, my husband has a child, 16 female, who we'll call Laura, with whom only my mother-in-law, and to some degree, father-in-law have a relationship with from his nuclear family. The reason being was that she was conceived when her mom poked holes through condoms. There was a whole drama about it with my mother-in-law begging my husband to have a relationship with Laura, but he simply couldn't. He even had to get psychiatric help in order to be able to cope with it. The mom admitted she did it so he would stay with her due to responsibility, but it did not work. He pays child support because the law mandates it, but nothing more. I didn't hear about this news from my husband, but from my mother-in-law, and she emphasized that she liked me a lot and hoped I would be a good enough person and procure a relationship between my husband and Laura. I was flabbergasted and asked my now husband about it because my mother-in-law made it seem so different than the truth. He explained he was going to tell me before we moved in together, and to be fair he kind of had already gave me little infos here and there, and explained the whole situation and even told me I could go to therapy with him and see the psych info if that's what I wanted, but things were not like my mother-in-law said. His sister confirmed this as well, and explained this issue was the reason she was not as close to her parents anymore. Things went okey-ish for some time, and even the wedding went without issues. We all have several boundaries and the mother-in-law more or less respects them, although she still has constant communication with Laura and her mom. We have several cycles of very LC with her. But things went to overdrive once my sister-in-law got pregnant with Mark. My mother-in-law started telling everybody it was not her first grandchild and all that cryptic stuff. My husband was so uncomfortable about it. She pushed for Laura to be involved in birthday parties, christening, etc. But we all said no. She also invited both of them to her birthday party a couple times, and we simply did not attend. Now the new issue is that Laura has been so sad for not having the biological father in her life. My husband said no and left immediately. I stayed while grabbing our stuff since I had brought food and told her it was not going to happen. According to my mother-in-law, Laura just wants to know my husband since he is her real dad, and despite being okay with her stepdad, it's not the same. She said she will give her our address and contact info because she is desperate for a connection. I told her I would call the police on all of them. I said my sister-in-law will be very upset with her when she hears of this, and to not be surprised to get less access to Mark. My mother-in-law called my husband cruel and said I was a bad person for encouraging his cruelty towards an innocent child. I told her I understand Laura is innocent, but she most likely would not be asking the same if it was a woman who conceived in the same circumstances. Am I the jerk? Update: I thank you all for your opinions, even if you say we are monsters or cruel. I'm trying to keep up, but I think I need to clarify some things. I asked if I was the jerk, not because I want to betray my husband, but because I stand by him no matter what. The condom did not break and he was very into safe sex. She assured him she was on the pill but he wanted to be safer by using condoms. Yes, she admitted to poking holes when he asked her if she would consider an abortion and if not if they could co-parent because he really didn't want a relationship anymore. She admitted to it. The mother-in-law knows all of this. She is not in jail because she begged my husband to not report it and he just wanted it all over. My father-in-law is like Switzerland now. At the beginning he was up in arms until my sister-in-law asked him if he would feel the same if it happened to her. Mother-in-law is on thin ice with the sister-in-law since she introduced Mark to Laura on a zoo outing without consulting her first. The mother-in-law is not allowed alone time with Mark anymore. He has to pay child support until Laura is 18, or done with education in the country we live. He already made sure to make a will leaving her the minimum allowed by law since you can't disinherit children in the country, but you can leave them the least amount. The mother-in-law is very distraught at this since he had me and Mark as main beneficiaries. I do believe my mother-in-law is pushing harder for him to see his daughter since Mark was born because my husband is amazing with him. We even took him on a trip recently and we are very loving towards him. We also spend a bunch on him because we own our place, but it's all in my name for obvious reasons. I don't know if Laura knows, but I would never tell her because it is not my place, and despite everything, I think it is horrible to learn and worse from someone you don't even know. Update: I want to thank everybody that took the time to reply even if it was against us. You gave us the push we needed to clear the situation. I am sorry this is long. I showed my husband the post, and after spending a long time reading the comments, he decided enough was enough. Yesterday morning he texted both my sister and mother-in-law telling them he would like to meet and have this over with. Mother-in-law said we could do it in the afternoon and that Laura was coming too. We all said okay. My sister and brother-in-law met us at the door because they didn't want to go in before us. It was really tense since the beginning. Laura tried to hug everybody, but we asked her to please not. Then she tried to hug my husband and he was slightly less polite and asked her to not touch him. My mother-in-law was very cheerful somehow, and my father-in-law was just offering everybody drinks and snacks. He was like living in his own reality. We sat down, and after what felt like the longest 5 silent minutes of my life, my husband turned to Laura and asked her if she could please leave him alone. Laura responded that he was her dad and she will need his support when she goes to university since she was planning to move to our city and it was very expensive and hard to find a place. She said she knew he owned his own place and that he clearly has money to spare, so she was wondering if he would help her out. My husband said no, that he was already paying child support and will stop as soon as the law allows him to. She was upset but somehow kept going. She turned to me and said that at the end of the day what is my husband's will go to her since my mother-in-law explained the inheritance laws to her, and she wanted to be in good terms with me for when we need to decide what to do with the house, etc. I just told her not to worry, because the house is on my name only, and there is already a will covering it all. Mother-in-law knew about the will, but not the house situation. Laura was a bit taken aback and looked at my mother-in-law like asking for help. She said that even if there is no future money, she thought my husband was unfair to her and that she used to think he simply didn't want to be a dad, but he is amazing with Mark and we even take him on trips. My sister-in-law asked her point blank if she knew how she was conceived, and she does. Laura knows everything and says that while it was not the nicest way her mom wanted her so badly that made it happen. She said sister-in-law should understand because she has her cousin and she would love a relationship with him. My sister-in-law was seething and my brother-in-law told Laura he will literally call the cops if she tries to get near Mark. She started crying saying that she wanted her family to love her and be as awesome as everybody is with Mark and that it is not her fault, and her mom is not a bad person, she just wanted a family and my husband denied them that. My husband said that it was the lying and the deception that costed the relationship, not him, that if there was an honest mistake things would have been different. He told her he will never be her dad and she needs therapy. He said that she could get a job instead of expecting him to pay for her life in the long term and that he is not willing to have contact after today. Mother-in-law started begging both her kids not to go and maybe do family therapy. They both said they are going no contact with her and that the father-in-law is on thin ice. Mother-in-law is blocked everywhere. I guess this is it. No contact with mother-in-law from all of us. Sister-in-law and husband seem actually pretty happy with the decision. We had dinner together and the topic was dropped after a couple minutes and we focused on other stuff. I am sorry there is no Disney ending, but this is for the best and I still support my husband's mental health above all. Update: I want to start by saying thank you again to the encouraging messages, and foo to the ones calling us all monsters. We are humans and flawed as every single one of the rest. I thought the issue was over and dropped, but it seems it is now. We had some weeks of bliss and chaos afterwards, we are all still recovering from it. Now to what happened to explode our life again, and please keep in mind it brings me no joy. My nephew Mark turned 5 weeks after my last update. After so many messages from my mother and father-in-law, my sister-in-law decided to let them attend but told my mother-in-law she was not to bother me or my husband. My mother-in-law didn't approach us once, but kept staring at us, and we decided to ignore her. The issue was that I kept holding my pumped stomach and my husband kept being goofy about it. I am not pregnant, I have several intolerances to delicious yummy things that make me bloated, but I misbehave and eat sometimes. My mother-in-law does not know about most of them since they are age-developed, and we used to go yo-yo with contacting her, so I guess she assumed I was pregnant. A week after Mark's birthday party is when everything went to hell. Laura came to my husband's office and made a scene. She was screaming at him how she couldn't believe he was starting over without taking care of his first child, and many other insults and stuff. She was throwing office supplies and crying and making a whole deal, so the office manager called the police and an ambulance. She also called me. By the time I arrived, my husband was having a panic attack in his office and totally sure he was fired. I told him to not worry and I will sort it. I explained everything to everybody from coworkers, to police, to EMTs. Laura was taken in for evaluation and the coworkers took a long lunch, so my husband could leave without having the awkward walk out. I took my husband home shaking, and as he was panicking and crying he said he felt unsafe. I took him to his psychiatrist and the psychiatrist was able to calm it, and we also had a session together days later where he opened up more about what the mom did to him. This has been very expensive, but worth it for sure. Laura was not really in trouble since the office manager agreed to let it go for an apology and payment. The mom, Laura's, was not having it. The moment she saw my husband at the station, she went ballistic and my husband couldn't handle it and he had another panic attack. This woman is a doctor but does not care for it. At the end, she paid the fine and restitution to the office and took Laura home. As a little background, I would like to share something I recently discovered about my husband's relationship with Laura's mom. Whatever I thought, it was way worse. I'll not go into details, but during therapy it came out she even threatened him once with a knife. It has been really hard to keep it together lately. But explains a lot of my husband's reactions here. My sister-in-law was so done with her mother after it, she told her dad he either divorce her or she is cutting him too. It is still a 50-50 since the sister-in-law is literally my father-in-law's favorite person, but he has been married to my mother-in-law for 44 years. My brother-in-law took my husband camping and they had fun and kept him distracted. He has been mainly on sick leave since the incident. He is a manager, so he would come one day a week and then get the rest of the week covered so he can recover. This was suggested by his bosses. They all feel like they should have protected their employees better. My sister-in-law, brother-in-law, my husband and I had a disagreement due to Laura's expenses. I suggested to just get her a block payment and requesting she should get therapy, but all of them say she should get nothing. I said I would be willing to pay for it, but after the new revelations on my husband's relationship with the mom, my sister-in-law is even more up on arms against helping them more than we should. I do feel bad for Laura, I do, and I know the rest used to a little. Now, there is no way in heaven to make them help her. The last nice thing my husband did was convincing his bosses to not charge Laura and paying for the monitors she broke. Since his leave, my husband spends a lot of his afternoons with Mark. My brother and sister-in-law are leading the charge on getting Laura to accept a bulk payment and therapy, but don't want her in their life. My mother and father-in-law are estranged so far, and my husband goes to therapy once a week and slowly recovering. And before it starts, yes, we know Laura is a victim of her mom, but does it give her a right to traumatize my husband? I still stand with my husband and probably will be called the worst of the worst, but some advice was very good the first few times, so that's why I came back.